Hey, this is Amanda Hammond, and this is the Millennial Rockstar Podcast. All right, in today's episode of the Millennial Rockstars Podcast, I got to interview Katie Kirchner, who is with NCR Corporation. Now, Katie she is just a dynamo of energy, and you're going to see that in the interview for sure. But she walks us through her career, which although she's only 32 years old, she has a wealth of experience from corporations all over the world. And she's bringing everything she's ever learned right into NCR here in Atlanta. But I think one of the biggest takeaways that I walked away with after this interview was when she talked about the best manager she ever had and how that manager actually empowered her and gave her a voice. So tune in and tell me what you think. Hey, this is Amanda Hammond. I'm known as the Millennial Translator because I help companies attract, retain, and engage top millennial talent. And speaking of top millennial talent, I have Katie Kirchner with NCR. Hey, Katie, how are you?
Hey, how's it going?
Well, I am so excited to have you on. I reached out a while back to NCR, to one of my contacts there, Christine Belknap, and she's like, oh my gosh, I have someone for you. And here you are. So welcome.
Surprise. I need to give her a coffee, a Starbucks gift card for that.
Well, fantastic. So, Katie, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about you?
Sure. So I'll tell a little bit about where I am right now, and then I'll talk about how I got there. So I work for NCR Corporation. If anyone is in Atlanta, or if you've seen pictures, we have this massive, beautiful glass building right off of the main highway that goes through Atlanta. Which I'm super excited about, not just the building, but the company itself. So I've been with the company for a little over a year. It's dynamic in nature, so I've actually changed my role already being in the company.
Wow.
But I currently lead brand and marketing shared services, which is basically brand strategy and governance, industry analyst relations, market insights and business intelligence, consumer and buyer persona development and journey mapping, and creative services and marketing agency management. So it's quite an eclectic group.
It is a very eclectic group.
Very eclectic group.
Put into one. Okay.
But what's super funny about that is not just that this role was kind of created within a certain framework that our marketing leader wanted, but also how it fits in with my background and why am I able to kind of navigate and do this very eclectic set of work.
Okay.
Rewind just a couple of years back, because I'm not that old. But I actually started in the restaurant industry, and I worked there for about 10 years. And I will say I learned so much learning in that industry. I would highly recommend anyone who hasn't worked in the service industry to do so. It's anything from multitasking to dealing with difficult people. People are different when they're hangry. I think we all know that.
Yes, they are.
So, and not only that, but the dynamics of the different age groups that you work with within the restaurant industry. You have career restaurateurs who are there until well into their 60s, to teenagers who are just coming out of high school and they're being hostesses, right? So I learned quite a bit in the dynamics of how to deal with different types of teams, and then also the multitasking, the aggressiveness of the entire sort of industry, that where you're in, you have to think on your feet. It's very stressful. I loved every minute of it. I will say I loved working in the industry. But from there, I decided, I was in school at the time. Most people, they have a job while they're in school. And I was actually a musical theater major. And I had this great passion for learning about theater and music. And I did quite a bit of theater, from chorus to musical theater, all the way to dramas on the stage. And then I realized I also had a great knack for languages. So I started learning languages at an early age. So I am Japanese and Irish. So my mom, and she grew up a little bit in Japan as well, California, US. My grandmother's straight off the boat. My dad has that Irish Lithuanian background. So he's a very eclectic, funky background. So I grew up in this multinational sort of cultural home. So by nature, I wanted to learn different languages. I just thrived on understanding the culture. So because of that, I kind of got drawn into, well, who lets you see other countries and kind of learn about cultures, and where would language value? And then I fell into business. So I changed my major from musical theater to to where apparently you'll starve and it's so hard to get into. And I was like, all right, I moved to business, and I loved it. And I kind of, it's just so funny. You study theater and you realize how much you'll actually use theater in business. But
yes, that's true.
Yeah, branding, for example, marketing, form of theater. That should be a play, by the way. I'm going to get coined for that. So I started in the business realm, and with languages and with travel. So I also love to travel. I think the only way for an individual to truly learn about the culture that you're going to sell into, or you understand, there are two things. You got to learn their language, and you got to learn their food. I think that's the basis of every culture, but we won't get into that part. So after that, I got my bachelor's in Spanish, Italian, and international business from Georgia State University. Love the Panthers. So straight into the city. And I actually started college when I was 16 years old. Okay. So that was just, won't go into that. AP, finished that, needed to go to college earlier, decided to do so. But after that, I was like, okay, well, I'm really loving this business aspect. And this was during a time where, I think a lot of millennials can identify if you're in the older realm of the millennials, but recession and hard to get jobs, and, where am I going to go next? So I actually decided to move into my master's right away. Okay. So along with my master's, I studied international business, and I had a focus on branding and corporate strategy.
Okay.
So give me 1 second. Just 1 second. Sorry. There we go. I just had to move. We have a eco-friendly building here at NCR. So if no one's moving in a room, the lights will go out. So sorry about that. Another plus for NCR. But so after I finished my master's in international business, I did a couple of boutique consulting engagements. So I first lived in Caracas, Venezuela, and I did a consulting engagement there. And then I was like, I want to do consulting. And I think when you get your master's, or you always think of like this amazing life where everyone travels and you get to experience the cultures, sometimes you think consulting first, right?
Right.
And that's what I wanted to do. I also loved corporate strategy. So I was like, I want to do consulting. And so the dean of my business, or the dean of our international business college, actually sat me down, and he was like, okay, what are your plans for your life? Basically drew a timeline, which was the most valuable thing this gentleman could do. And he just said, do you want to have kids and get married here? And, what are your aspirations? What do you want to learn, et cetera? And so I told him all these things, and I was just everyone and anyone to do that. Timeline, at least a certain amount of your life, your major goals, what do you want out of your life? And he geared me. He said, well, based off of that, I actually wouldn't suggest consulting, but everyone needs a basis in operations. Every company needs operations. So it would be so valuable for you to learn that. And just through connections and a job that popped up with a global logistics company, I got placed there. So that was leading strategy / marketing for the Americas region for one of the top 3 global logistics companies in the world. So huge, massive company. And that was my first, I wouldn't say it was like my real job. You don't consider restaurant a real job. I don't know why people don't, because it is a real job. Or, the consulting, going around Italy and all over these places. But really getting into that corporate world, and then having to explore how the real world does what you learn in your master's, Yeah. Started there. Then I decided through that, I actually traveled the world, lived in a couple different places, Hong Kong, Buenos Aires, Argentina, Madrid. And I met my husband through that, who then encouraged me to go back to Europe to live there. And I decided not to move with the company I currently was with, which was a German company. I learned a lot of cultural aspects about. And this is the funny part. I worked for a German company in America, and then I moved to Germany, and I got hired by an American company. And I actually got hired there because they wanted an individual who could translate why American culture doesn't fit everywhere, and why the strategies or the marketing they're going to instill won't work in the rest of Europe or in Germany itself. I was like, that's really interesting. So got hired there, moved up the ranks to lead sales and marketing for the region, more marketing focused this time. It's kind of cool because I could take my strategy aspects and then apply that to implementation strategy. And then from there, we got a new CEO while I was in that position. And I guess I made an impression on him somehow. And so he pulled me to leading marketing and communications globally for the company. Wow. So that was it was a big jump. And it was awesome that he had so much faith in me to do that. I mean, I was confident at the same time. This is a $4.5 billion company, 29,000 employees, 59 countries. And I'm just thinking, okay, I can do this. And he brought me into the office when he had first, asked me whether I wanted to. First, he asked me if I was interested in the position. And I was like, yes, please. Like, who's not going to be interested in someone telling you, would you like to lead marketing communications globally for the company? And then he brings me in. He said, okay, listen, I want to know if you had 1/5 of the resources that we have today within marketing communications, what would you do?
Okay, great question.
Yeah, it was a great question because you're just like, yeah, that's a tough one. So I laid out kind of just off the top of my head a plan. And I said, well, I think these are the most important areas to focus in based on what I've seen in the field. And that was important. I had been in the field. I'd seen what wasn't and what was working, especially from a European perspective. I had gained quite a network in some of the other regions just because it became, you just start to create it because you're creating field kind of marketing elements. So I brought that to the top and I told him what I would cut automatically, where we need to focus as a business. I knew our strategy just because that trickled down quite easily. So then he said that was great. And I guess he decided to put me in the position. And he said the best thing that I did, because I talked to him later about it, when I presented it was I didn't come in and tell him, well, the first thing I would do is, build another empire. I would start again and I would try and build my empire. So it wasn't as power focused. It was more, where can we get the best result with the smallest amount of resources? And it's not to say, well, I would start building resources again, which apparently others did. It was more, hey, if I have to be scrappy, like I know how to be scrappy. I've had a job since I was 15 years old and I know how to kind of build things out without having much. So I guess that helped in that scenario. And so from there, that company actually got acquired. And I decided not to stay on with the acquiring company because I would have had to live in a different country than Germany and I didn't want to move. So it was just this perfect kind of time in my life where I said, you know what, I'm ready to come back to the States. I hadn't been in the States in about 9 years and I wanted to come back to family. So I interviewed for the position at NCR while I was still in Germany. I had 11 interviews, which is pretty insane, but NCR is, they like to know that their people are good people. So I can also say that that's a good thing. And then I got my first position within like a portfolio sort of marketing role. And then marketing changed and shifted a little bit within our company. We're dynamic. With the technology industry, which is just as dynamic, you also have to be dynamic in nature. So then here I am.
Fantastic. Oh my gosh, you have had like all of these like crazy experiences in a relatively short amount of time. I mean, you probably had a lot of momentous, different occasions in your career that someone would have over the course of like a 20 or 30 year career. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. And that's why people don't believe me when I tell them how old I am, although I try not to tell them how old I am. But it's absolutely serious. When I first started my leading marketing communications for that company, people would first meet me. They would say, I was just wondering, like, how old are you? And I said, well, I mean, you're more than welcome to guess. Don't ask a woman her age, although I don't care. I'll tell them. But I said, you can guess. I have 2 degrees. I've lived in 7 different countries. I'm married, so I was getting married at the time, so I'm getting married at the time. Part of my degrees is a master's, and they would be like, okay, yeah. So you're like, you just like age really well. So you're like 39, right? And this was like years back. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like even if you said I aged well and then you told me that you thought I was 39, like I don't think that's I don't know to take that as a compliment or not. And it's partly because people, I mean, you have people our age who we love to learn, and we've been ambitious in nature, and it's even the aspect of eclectic learning or focused learning, right? I just happen to learn from many different fields, and fortunate enough to have learned strategy, which is a science that can be applied to any industry, including marketing. Marketing is also the science. So I just think people don't kind of match the two to think there's no way that you can have done all that and have been that young. Yeah. So
That's awesome. I mean, that is just an incredible background of information, though. And I feel like what I see a lot of times with my rock star millennials is that they do have what I call a lily pad of experiences. You're here and you're gaining skills and information and you're learning, but then you're ready to move on when you feel like you've mastered it. You're not willing to sit there and just wait, for the next thing to come trickling down to you. You want to proactively go after it. And so you do more like lily pad hops, whereas previous generations were more willing to wait and move up rung by rung up a singular silo. And you are not singular in your silos. How about that?
I don't know if it's even just that. So I would also say it's the mentality that certain generations have. So I hate to use the word hate. I dislike when people say millennials, are company hoppers or career hoppers. And that's just, it may be true in some cases, but in other cases, it's simply, listen, the environment that we live in today is so dynamic in nature that we're actually pushed to move in different areas and learn different things. I mean, if you look at a marketing role today, you might as well be a technology officer. Like you're meant to know technologies and data and analytics. You can run data and analytics if you want to. So actually, if you had come from a marketing role and then you went into a data and analytics role and you had to go to a different company or whatever to learn that was the force of the whole where consumer technologies and consumers meeting commerce are changing. So it's not so much that I'm not loyal to this company, loyal to the company, but just for my own nature to do my passion better. So not much of a career, but my passion better. I've got to learn X or I've got to know X, and I get pulled in a different direction.
Yes. Fantastic. That is amazing. So Katie, with all of this experience that you have, I would imagine that there have been some bumps and bruises along the way. There have maybe been some lessons learned along the way. So share with us, what is the one that immediately jumps into your mind?
Oh, so the top one I would say is, so if there's one thing I've learned, I live by this motto, and I tell my team I live by this motto as well, and it's to be open, honest, and transparent. And I've learned that having those two things at the core of the relationships that you have, not just personally, but also within business, actually proves to be quite fruitful. So I've learned that the hard way. I've had previous bosses who would think that I was competing with them because I'm just that go-getter and always throwing out ideas and challenging things. So I play corporate strategy. I play devil's advocate a lot. When you build strategy, you have to do that. And you stress test things. And sometimes that wasn't taken as well as you would have liked it to be. And so I realized whenever I present an idea, or I'm forcing someone to push themselves to think differently, even if it's my superior, if it's my boss, I need to first establish that the relationship is, and this is the second thing that I hold core to learning, is my sole goal is actually for my peers, my employees, and my managers to be successful. That is my goal. So in nowhere is there, my goal is for me to be successful, or my goal is for me to find success and move up and move on. Because if I hold dear to say, I want my boss to be successful. And how can I help my boss be successful?
Right.
My employees, how can I help them learn, grow, and become successful? By default, I become successful.
Right.
But if you change your mentality to it's about you and it's about you becoming successful, you act differently.
Mm-hmm.
So I've learned that from that experience of former boss who thought, I was trying to take the reins and I wanted their job. I realized, man, I have to be honest and open, like right up front. And I need to continually be transparent with these individuals to why am I doing these actions? Be transparent into how do I think? How can you interact with me? And being honest in feedback. Like if I give individuals feedback, that there's a direct part, open, honest, transparent, and probably direct would be a fourth one. I would love that back to me, right? Because I can't grow or change or develop if it's not that way. So bump in a road is people tend to think, or I don't want to say people in general, but individuals may think, I need to guard my intelligence or guard that because I don't want to be indispensable. And it's like, man, if you just knew putting the team members first and your boss first in success, like it's life-changing. It's actually a weight off of your chest to always think it has to be about you reaching that next level. You'll get there. You will.
Right,
and
right.
Much faster if you're helping other people become successful.
Oh,
much faster.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, for every person that, will maybe not treat you as well, there'll be 20 others that'll be like, oh, Katie did this for me, and they'll bend over backwards for you and do even more than you could ever ask. Sorry, I just hit my desk. All right. Fantastic. That's awesome. All right. So it feels like 20 minutes ago, we talked about Georgia State and going into the working world. Now, when you were sitting in class at Georgia State or in your master's program, were there, you kind of mentioned that there were some differences in what you were learning versus the reality. So tell us a little bit about what was that reality check like for you? Was it a huge wake-up call, or do you feel like you transitioned easily?
It was, I just actually had lunch with one of my professors recently, a master's program at Georgia State. And I told him, I said, I think what they teach you in school is foundational. It's things that you should know going in. Like you should know how to do accounting X. And that helps you because you have to apply it to Y and Z, whatever that is. There are foundational things to know as a basis. I think the wake-up call came from understanding how politics works. So politics isn't just in politics. Right. So you're like, hey, yeah, these processes, this is how they're supposed, this is the ideal. I learned that this is the ideal, and this is how you build strategy, and this is the reason you do it. And you try and, bring a company out of ailment. It's like, yes, but there are targets and goals that are sometimes unseen, that you don't realize until you get in there, right? So, I've been in, and I did boutique consulting. So I've also been in companies that are like, yeah, we want this to be the goal. And you're like, okay, well, I've done the research and I've done the data, and actually, like, this is a better goal. Like, this would be the ideal because based on where the market's going or whatever it is. And they're like, yeah, but we want this to be the goal. So we want you to create data and strategy. So this should be the goal. And you're thinking in your head, that doesn't make sense. That goes against everything I learned. Like, shouldn't you should look at the balance sheet and you should do the research right. But they understand, like, it's not that it's a malicious thing. It may be they have a different long-term vision of what they want to do with that company. They want to do something completely different, or someone's going to retire and that's going to change the direction of where that company's going to go, or whether they're going to set themselves up for sale or whatever it is. So learning that there's A, politics, and B, underlining initiatives that don't pop up in your everyday case study when you walk through your master's program. Yes. That's probably the biggest, like, whoa, okay, so it's not all textbook?
Interesting. I mean, those people get in there and just mess things up.
Why would you want to do that? That makes no sense. And then, you never know what it's for, but clients always know.
That's awesome. So let me ask you this, Katie. Let's talk about, bosses in the past, mentors maybe in the past, or maybe current that you have. What are they doing or what have they done to keep you really engaged? Because, you're super dynamic. Just flat out of the gate, you're like on your own. So they probably don't have to do a whole lot. But, what is it that they do that keeps you just like super passionate and just like out there asking tough questions and getting that feedback? What is it that they do for you?
Oh man, some of the best managers I have ever had truly lived, and not just said it, but lived empowerment. So,
give me an example.
The managers that would come to me and say, "Hey, we need to get X done, or we have this challenge here. What would you recommend doing, or what would you do?" I said, well, based off XYZ, I would do this. Okay, go, like you go and do it, or you go figure it out, or not that they wouldn't guide along the way, but that they felt that they could empower me to make a big decision or to build something that would actually affect anything in the company. I think empowerment to say, to not micromanage constantly, like always worried like, oh, is this she's too young, or she's going to fail because she doesn't know any better. She hasn't been in the industry for 30 years. I've had two fantastic managers, actually three fantastic managers who were just like, they were literally like, well, what do you think? And well, if that's what you think, then let's go with that. It's the simple trust in, I think this because of X, and I just see why, and they believe it and they empower you to go and do it. And you know what? You may fail sometimes. Like your guess or what you decided to do may not work out. But I've had those same managers come back to me like, you know what? Yeah, that didn't work out. That's okay. So what else would you do? Like they always ask me, that didn't work. So what do you think was the challenge in that? Why didn't that work out? And it made you think, okay, well, if this is why it didn't work, then maybe we can try X and, change some things, some elements to get to the right solution, to get it to the target. That afraid to fail. And I know that's so overused. Don't be afraid to fail. But you actually have to have management that is also not afraid to fail and afraid for you to fail. And I love that. And I've had some great managers that they empower you and they're not afraid for you to fail. That's
awesome. That's really great. And that's a great sign of a wonderful manager or leader, because I can tell you that is not always the case.
No. No. There are people who like to control, and there are people who, they're scared because their team is a reflection of them. And at the same time, you have managers who are like, hey, if we fail together, and I'll take the rap just as much as you'll get the rap. So
that's awesome. Yeah. That's good. And that makes the team want to work even harder to make them look good.
Oh yeah.
So, okay, well, good. Now, what about any kind of perks for any of the companies that you've been with, current or in the past, that you were just like, man, this is nice. It doesn't have to be, ping pong tables or anything of that nature, but, extra days off or anything that just pops into your mind that a company has offered as far as benefits or perks.
Oh, best benefit.
It keeps you engaged and happy at work.
I am probably the worst at this. Actually, if I can't give one best, I'll give two. So the first one is flexibility in time. So I think the worst thing a company can do, especially in this day and age, and says you need to work from 8 to 5. You need to be in the office at 8 and you need to leave at 5. And it's like, okay, well, if you're more flexible and you allow me to get a better work-life balance, you're going to get far more productivity out of me. And I currently work for a company that's like that. That's very like, hey, you don't have to, if you live not in the city and you need to drive all the way down here, come at like 10, leave by 2 so you miss traffic. You'll finish your day at home. You may work longer one day and shorter the next day. Yeah. When they strive for results rather than a time clock, that is one of the best benefits that a company can give. And believe me, you'll get the results if you don't focus on the time clock.
Yeah.
And the second thing is I am a workout masochist. So part of my work-life balance is being able to go to the gym. And I don't want to, I'm like, NCR is so great. Like, come work at NCR. I'm basically trying to get talent. So anyone who watches this, I'm basically trying to get talent.
Okay. Recruiting video, okay.
Recruiting video. Plug.
Disclaimer.
Yeah. plug. But we have the coolest gym ever in our building. And the reason I like that is it's a part of the work balance conversation, right? For them to be able to provide that, to focus on health and to make sure, hey, not only are you flexible for when you're in the office and when you're not, we focus on the results, but we also want you to stay healthy while you're here, and have the ability to work out. And they give classes, also on great schedules. They have wonderful personal trainers in there as well. So I love the fact that I can come in really early and I can work out, and then I can just go straight to my desk, or I can on my lunch break go and work out and come back up to the office. And I like that flexibility. So that's probably the second cool perk. Let's say that's a really cool perk.
I love that. That's pretty cool. Very cool. So I assume that you don't go straight to your desk from working.
Yeah, no. We have an awesome locker room. So.
Okay. I think that your coworkers would appreciate
that. I'm always like, I did wear the perfume. Okay, just making sure.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I know that you are obviously not fresh out of college, but is there something that it's because you are fairly new, you were on the job market fairly recently, so you have a good idea about what it's like being out there looking for a job. What is it that companies need to do a better job of when they're looking at getting more rock star millennials like yourself?
Oh man, you know what? My biggest pet peeve, and I am relatively new because I was applying when I was in Germany for the job in the US.
You were.
I know people want to be very extensive in the hiring process. I think that there are a lot of companies out there that make it so difficult even to apply. And I want to say, like, an application is important, but it only says so much about a person. And if you're looking, if the job you're hiring for is a copywriter or a communication person, absolutely. Then you'll probably I want you to write an essay about X, Y, Z. And I know you need to weed out some, because they probably get thousands I know this. I hire people as well. We get thousands and thousands of CVs, but truly, talking to somebody is a little bit different than having them, go through this massive application process. Mm-hmm. And I think interviews are important. So I actually love that NCR did 11 interviews to hire me, because it gave me a chance to see all the different people in the company and talk to them, the different viewpoints, what each of them would be asking me. But also it gave, and we do this today, like I'm not the only one who interviews individuals that we hire on my team. I actually have my peers interview them. I have my managers, other people in different areas I know that they would engage with, because everyone has a different perspective. So what you as a hiring manager, you may know what you want and you're like, I have this vision, and the insight you get from someone else looking at that person from a different angle is so valuable. And you don't get that from an application because you're not, or an essay that someone wrote, because someone so I'll give a concrete example. I did horribly on my GMAT. Like I'm not a standardized test taker. And I literally went to admissions, the head of admissions at Georgia State. And I don't know if she remembers this. Maybe she will if she ever watches this. But I went to her and I said, listen, I know that my GMAT score is not good. I'm not good at standardized tests. I said, you could give me any other test in the world except for a standardized test and I will ace it. And I said, I guarantee you, like, I am going to be a great asset to this university, that I'm going to do such a great job. And she said, well, let me have you talk to, the business call, the dean for our Institute of International Business, or whatever it was. At that time, he had a different position. I said, okay. And so I sat down and I said, listen, I pitched myself. I talked to him. I told him why I would bring value. I told him how, sorry, I didn't score well on it. I did all these, different ways to do better at it. But I'm telling you, these are concrete. I said, how long I've worked and, what I would bring as a value, just verbally being able to say all that. And I know some people have started doing videos to do that. I've seen that on the internet, which I think is funny. But I got in based off of that. Awesome. For going to a business school, which is mostly people look at your scores, I got in strictly off of an interview or 2 interviews, and then telling why my background mattered. And I love the example of, Kat Cole. I don't know if you've heard of her. She's an executive here in Atlanta as well for Focus Brands. And she doesn't have undergraduate degree, but she wanted to go into a master's program. And so for her to say, hey, I don't need my undergraduate degree to be able to do this program, I think I'll bring value to it. You know, she went to Ted Turner and asked him for a referral. And she's like, listen, like, I'm telling you, I can really bring value to you by me coming to your program. And I think the same is with companies. I'm not saying interview every single person. You have to have a lead out. But don't make your application process like the most horrendous thing, or people writing 17 essays, et cetera. I don't think them writing 17 essays will let you know how they're going to be in their job. I would rather, and I actually saw Siemens do this. Oh, I said a name of the company. I see Siemens do this, where they had you record a video and just talk about yourself. And I was like, oh, that is genius. Man, I wish like more companies would do that, because I'd love to watch the video over even me as a hiring manager. I'd rather watch your video than read your 17 essays. So.
All right. So we've already made a disclaimer that this is a hiring. This is basically hiring for NC owners. So there you go. Okay. That's cool. And I couldn't agree more. I actually was speaking at a university recently, and a lot of the students, it was right before graduation, a lot of the students were talking about the process of getting a job. And, you know, they were going on to some fantastic companies like Oracle and Cisco, and I mean, huge brand name companies, but they were all complaining about that initial application piece. That one of them said it took like 3.5 hours to just get through the process. And they're like, and then I never heard anything back. And it's like, that was, 3 hours I'll never get back. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, it's painful universally, I think. So very cool. All right. So Katie, I mean, this has been fantastic. I have learned so much. I mean, I now want to be your friend, and like, we're going to hang out because we both live in Atlanta. So, but we do have to wrap up. So is there any last like nugget of advice that you would like to give the audience of the Millennial Rockstar podcast?
Wow. Pressure. You own your happiness. So you choose your attitude and you own your happiness. So don't expect a manager to own it for you. Don't expect a friend to own it for you. You own how you choose to approach things and what you know is your passion and what's going to make you happy. So focus on you making yourself happy and less about thinking that other people or things are going to do it for you.
Wow. Wise words. I can't say anything else. So thank you so much for joining us, Katie, and thank you to watching. See you next time. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of the Millennial Rockstar Podcast. If you are looking for even more information on millennials and some free resources, visit my website at amandahammett.com. The link is below. It's amandahammett.com. There you can download a free millennial employee engagement guide that will give you all kinds of tips and tricks on how to keep those millennials engaged on a day-to-day basis. Because we all know that millennials who are happy at work are more productive at work.